Gunfights, cowboys, gunslingers. The Old West is a big part of American folklore. The adventures of outlaws and lawmen from the Wild West era have become legendary sagas, with many of their deaths following suit in equally fantastical fashion. For other legendary figures, their deaths were part of the real history of the Old West, often in surprisingly unremarkable ways. Their fates were merely outcomes of the harsh realities that accompanied years of existence in the untamed Western territories.
Buffalo Bill Cody's body sat around for 6 months. Buffalo Bill Cody became a household name in the late 1800s thanks to his famous Buffalo Bill's Wild West traveling show. On January 10, 1917, while visiting his sister in Denver, Cody succumbed to kidney failure. The date is important because in Cody's most up-to-date will, he requested burial atop Lookout Mountain in Colorado, which had remarkable views. However, the road leading to the mountain was rendered impassable by snow during that frigid January. In homage to his request, the mortuary extended the preservation period for 6 months, which required embalming it 6 separate times. During this time, many people argued for him to be buried in Cody, Wyoming, the town he had founded, as articulated in a prior will. Ultimately, it's widely agreed Cody was indeed buried on Lookout Mountain, but conspiracies suggest his body was taken and moved to Wyoming. Bat Masterson had a heart attack at his desk. Bat Masterson's initial years were marked by his prowess as a gunslinger and eventually becoming sheriff after meeting Wyatt Earp. Earp helped convince Masterson that he'd be a good fit to help rein in the chaos of Dodge City, Kansas. Because his 2 brothers were already in law enforcement near Dodge City, Masterson committed himself to the task. His tenure as sheriff bore witness to triumphs and tragedies, notably the tragic demise of his brother Ed, shot and killed. By age 49, Masterson grew tired of the chaos of the West, prompting a yearning for a tranquil life in the East alongside his spouse. They moved to New York, where Masterson worked as a newspaper journalist and U.S. Marshal, roles he occupied for several years. Tragically, on October 25, 1921, at age 67, Masterson died at his desk from a massive heart attack after writing what became his final column for the Morning Telegraph. One of Hollywood's biggest movie cowboys wept at Wyatt Earp's funeral. During the 1800s, the name of lawman Wyatt Earp didn't resonate widely. It wasn't until after his passing that his renown surged, ignited by a biography detailing his daring escapades, including the shootout at the OK Corral, was published. Near the end of his life, after his gunslinging days in the West were behind him, Earp relocated to Los Angeles. There, he assumed the role of an unpaid advisor within the burgeoning realm of Western films, becoming close with Western stars like Tom Mix and William Hart. So profound were his connections that both Hart and Mix were pallbearers at his funeral in 1929, with reports suggesting Mix was visibly moved during the ceremony. Doc Holliday died of tuberculosis at only 36. Originally a dentist in Texas, John Henry Doc Holliday's penchant for card games steered him onto a different path. Becoming close with Wild West legends like Wyatt Earp, Holliday partook in his fair share of shootouts, gambling, and heavy drinking. The latter aggravated his pre-existing tuberculosis, precipitating a progressive decline in his health. Holliday finally checked himself into a sanitarium in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, to seek treatment for his increasingly worsening tuberculosis. In 1887, at the age of 36, he drew his final breath in that very sanitarium bed. After Annie Oakley died of anemia, her husband was likely so heartbroken he died 18 days later. Annie Oakley emerged as a role model for young girls worldwide as she etched her name as a legendary sharpshooter, touring extensively with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show over numerous years. Yet prior to attaining the status of shooting icon Annie Oakley, she was known as Annie Mosey, a 16-year-old with a knack for shooting extremely well. During a visit to her sisters, a local innkeeper arranged a trap shooting competition, pitting her against professional exhibition shooter Frank Butler. The challenge revolved around hitting the most targets out of 25. While Frank shot 24, Annie shot all 25. This feat captivated Frank, and the two married shortly after. They enjoyed almost 50 years together until Oakley's life was claimed by anemia. The circumstances of Butler's death remain undisclosed, yet his passing a mere 18 days following Oakley's demise hints at the potential toll of a broken heart. The couple found their final resting place side by side, interred within Oakley's family burial site. Billy the Kid was shot down by a sheriff waiting for him in his dark bedroom. Billy the Kid really was just that, a kid. At just 18 years of age, he had already committed a potentially 17 killings and was still on the run. A few years later, Sheriff Pat Garrett successfully apprehended Billy, taking him to stand trial where he was found guilty and sentenced to hang. However, only a handful of days before his scheduled execution in 1881, Billy managed a daring escape, leaving 2 guards dead in his wake. Garrett embarked on a 3-month pursuit, eventually receiving a tip about Billy's location. Seizing the opportunity, Garrett clandestinely entered Billy's dimly lit chamber at the Maxwell Ranch in New Mexico and waited. As Billy entered the room, Garrett shot and ended his life. In the aftermath, much like other Western legends, conjecture and conspiracy theories surrounded Billy's demise. Doubts emerged. Was it truly Billy or another young man who looked like the 21-year-old? In later years, 2 distinct individuals emerged, both claiming to be Billy the Kid, but their stories could never be proven. Davy Crockett's death at the Alamo remains controversial. Davy Crockett's name, the King of the Wild Frontier, is familiar to many. Yet when queried about his notable achievements, varied responses emerge. He embodied roles as a frontiersman, a U.S. congressman, and a storyteller. However, he is most renowned for his valiant last stand in 1836 during the Battle of the Alamo, where he met his end. The specifics of his final moments remain a topic of fervent discussion. All that is certain about the fate of David Crockett is that he died at the Alamo on the morning of March 6, 1836, at the age of 49. A prevailing narrative recounts that Crockett, alongside a contingent of 200 men, valiantly resisted thousands of Mexican soldiers for a grueling 13 days before succumbing to overwhelming odds. It was during this ultimate clash that Crockett perished while defending the Alamo. Yet, alternate perspectives from certain historians posit that Crockett might have been among a group of 6 soldiers who surrendered under the promise of spared lives, but the opposing side did not honor the agreement and executed them all. Jesse James was shot in the back of the head by a former member of his gang. Jesse James was such a good thief that the governor of Missouri, Thomas Crittenden, had to personally pursue the outlaw's capture. Following a botched bank robbery, Jesse and his sibling Frank were lying low. As Frank transitioned toward an honest existence, he departed from Jesse's gang, forcing Jesse to find new members who lacked a sense of loyalty to him. This marked the entry of Bob Ford, whose brother Charlie had recently aligned with Jesse. Learning of Crittenden's $10,000 reward for Jesse James, Bob swayed his brother into orchestrating a scheme against him. The Fords struck an accord with Crittenden, securing both the bounty and a pardon. A few months later, the Ford brothers were with Jesse, moving into one of his houses. As Jesse removed his coat and holsters due to the heat, he turned around and noticed a dusty picture above the mantel and stood on a chair to clean it. Exploiting the moment, Bob fired a fatal shot into the back of Jesse's head. The death of Jesse James became a national sensation. The Fords made no attempt to hide their role. Robert Ford wired the governor to claim his reward. Crowds pressed into the little house in St. Joseph to see the dead bandit. Butch Cassidy may have shot the Sundance Kid. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid might bring to mind images of a young Paul Newman and Robert Redford. The true lives of Butch and the Sundance Kid were just as storied as their characters. With an average take of $35,000 per robbery, the Wild Bunch, led by Cassidy, remained an elusive quarry for law enforcement due to his meticulous pre-robbery preparations. However, after years of criminal exploits, Butch and the Sundance Kid decided to give it all up and move to South America to start a new life. They kept a low profile until allegedly taking a payroll in Bolivia. Pursued by Bolivian troops, a shootout led to one of the men being injured, reportedly the Sundance Kid. That night, 2 gunshots reverberated, and the men's cadavers were recovered with bullet wounds to their heads, one directly between the eyes of the Sundance Kid and Cassidy with a self-inflicted shot to his temple. Nonetheless, vigorous debates persist regarding the true identities of these men. Some have claimed that one or both men survived and returned to the United States. One of these claims was that Longabaugh lived under the name of William Henry Long in the small town of Duchesne, Utah. Long died in 1936, and his remains were exhumed in December 2008 and subjected to DNA testing. Anthropologist John McCullough stated Long's remains did not match the DNA which they had obtained from a distant relative of the Sundance Kid. Belle Starr was ambushed and her killer was never found. Belle Starr was likely more an associate of criminals than a hardened criminal herself. Although she faced a conviction for horse theft that led to a 9-month imprisonment, she never again encountered legal trouble. Nevertheless, she cultivated close ties with outlaws and individuals of dubious repute, including 2 husbands who died in gunfights. She was also associated with the James Younger Gang. On February 3, 1889, 2 days before her 41st birthday, Belle was killed. She was riding home from a neighbor's house when she was ambushed. After she fell off her horse, she was shot again to make sure she was dead. Her death resulted from shotgun wounds to the back and neck and in the shoulder and face. Her killer was never found. Rumors surrounded her demise, but in at least one version of the event, her own son Ed had a hand in the incident. Wild Bill Hickok was shot from behind while holding the dead man's hand. Wild Bill Hickok made a name for himself after his story of killing 3 men was published in a magazine. This marked the beginning of his renown as a sharpshooter. Engaging in a series of gun battles, he eventually ceased such encounters after accidentally causing the death of his own deputy. As time went on, Wild Bill's popularity waned, leading him into a period of adversity. He was just scraping by as a card player in Deadwood, South Dakota, on one fateful August day. Positioned with his back to the saloon's entrance, he was suddenly confronted by a young gunslinger, Jack McCall. A fatal shot was fired into the back of Wild Bill's head. In his final moments, he was holding a pair of aces and eights, a combination now forever recognized as the dead man's hand. Alcoholism killed Calamity Jane. Calamity Jane's name itself provides insight into her vibrant life. To make a living, she occasionally adopted male attire, working with the Pony Express, and some records suggest she engaged in prostitution. Becoming a member of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, Jane garnered renown for her adept marksmanship while astride a horse. Her mounting popularity was accompanied by a reputation for reveling in heavy drinking and enjoying life's pleasures. Ultimately, the whiskey caught up to her, leading to severe alcoholism that plagued her for numerous years until her passing at 51. Calamity Jane was buried at Mount Moriah Cemetery, South Dakota, next to Bill Hickok. 4 of the men who planned her funeral later stated that Hickok had absolutely no use for Jane while she was alive, so they decided to play a posthumous joke on him by burying her by his side.
Please like and share if you find the video content interesting and useful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below so as not to miss the upcoming interesting videos. Thanks for watching.